All right, so we're back, and you know what that means. It's time for another deep dive.
Always exciting to see what we're going to uncover.
Right, so today we're heading to the baseball diamond. More specifically, we're taking a look at an Associated Press article. It's called Ohtani and the Dodgers. Keep the Cubs and their rich history in the shadows in Japan. Quite a title, right?
Yeah, it definitely grabs your attention.
It does, and it hints at some really interesting dynamics at play. So basically, this article takes us to Tokyo for the opening series of the MLB regular season. The Dodgers are facing off against the Cubs.
And on the surface, you might think, okay, big deal. Two big league teams playing overseas. But there's so much more to it than that.
Right, and that's what we're here to explore. We want to break down why this particular matchup is so significant.
Yeah, we've got the star power of the Dodgers. Obviously, Shohei Ohtani is a huge factor there.
Huge. And then you've got the Cubs with their long history and dedicated fan base.
Yeah.
But as the article points out, even that history seems to be overshadowed a bit in this context.
It's a fascinating clash of narratives, and we're going to try to unpack it all for you. So let's start with this whole underdog thing that the article keeps coming back to.
Yeah, this idea of the Cubs as the perennial underdog. They haven't won a World Series in, forever until 2016.
Right, and even that recent victory doesn't seem to have completely erased that underdog image.
No, it seems like it's become part of their identity, almost something that Cubs fans take pride in.
And you see this playing out in Tokyo in a very real way. The article mentions that Cubs fans were totally outnumbered at the games, something like 10-1.
Wow, 10 to 1. That's wild. Can you imagine being a Cubs fan, traveling all the way to Japan and being surrounded by Dodgers fans?
It would be quite an experience. And the article actually quotes a Cubs fan named Zach Valavanis who says, "That's what's great about the Cubs. We're always the come-from-behind team." I feel like that's been the case forever.
And he even mentions that 2016 win. Like, even after achieving the ultimate goal, that underdog spirit still lingers.
It's really interesting, isn't it? Like, does winning a championship change a team's fundamental identity, or is there something deeper there?
Makes you wonder if part of the appeal of being a fan is that connection to the underdog, that rooting for the team that defies the odds.
It's a powerful narrative in sports, for sure.
Yeah.
And it makes you think about your own experiences. Have you ever been drawn to a team or an athlete because they were the underdogs?
I mean, there's something compelling about it, right? That David versus Goliath story.
Absolutely. So we've talked about the underdog narrative, but now we have to address the elephant in the room, or should I say the two-way phenom on the field.
Shohei Ohtani.
Right.
Right. There's no way to talk about this series without acknowledging the absolute frenzy surrounding him in Japan.
The article states that he's estimated to be like 60 to 70% of the draw for these games.
60 to 70%? That's insane. I mean, that's like saying most of the people in those stands are there specifically to see him play.
And the article really drives this point home by talking about the atmosphere at the team's batting practices. They describe the Cubs' practice as, well attended, which is normal.
Right, but then they say the Dodgers' practice was a total spectacle. Hundreds of photographers, reporters just swarming the place, and of course all the focus was on Ohtani.
And his Japanese teammates, Yoshinobu Yamamoto and Roki Sasaki, they're incredibly talented players in their own right, but even they kind of get eclipsed by Ohtani's star power.
It's wild. Just think about the implications of that for a second. One player having that much individual impact on a team sport, it raises some really interesting questions.
Right. Like, how do you balance that level of individual stardom with the overall team dynamic?
And how does it affect the other team, in this case the Cubs? I mean, they have a rich history and dedicated fans, but they're kind of playing second fiddle to Ohtani in this particular moment.
And it's important to point out that the Cubs do have Japanese players on their roster as well.
Yeah, the article mentions pitcher Shota Imanaga and designated hitter Seiya Suzuki. It says they don't go unnoticed. But there's a definite hierarchy of attention, isn't there?
For sure. I mean, Otani's just on another level right now in terms of global recognition. And, he's got that unique two-way ability that makes him such a captivating player.
Plus the whole narrative of him coming to the Dodgers is like a perfect storm of talent, timing, and hype.
Exactly. So it's not just about national pride. It's about witnessing a once-in-a-generation talent.
Speaking of hype, the article also touches on the financial aspect of all this and how much the Dodgers have invested in their roster.
Yeah, there's a funny quote from Zach Valavanis' brother Alex. He's talking about the Dodgers spending, and he jokes, what did they spend, $3, $4, $5 billion?
Yeah, he's obviously exaggerating, but it does highlight the fact that the Dodgers have been willing to spend big to get the best players.
And it makes you think about the expectations that come with that kind of investment, both from the fans and the organization itself.
Right, if a team is spending billions on players, they better be winning.
Exactly. But, it's not always a guarantee, is it? Money can buy talent, but it can't buy chemistry or, that unpredictable magic that makes a team truly great.
And it can't buy fan loyalty either. I
Yeah.
mean, look at the Cubs. They haven't always been contenders, but their fans have stuck with them through thick and thin.
It speaks to the idea that there's a deeper connection there than just wins and losses.
Definitely.
So let's talk about how the managers of both teams are approaching this whole dynamic in Tokyo. Well, Cubs manager Craig Counsell seems to have a pretty realistic perspective. He says, "We're playing the world champions. You expect that from that perspective. We're playing against the most famous player in the world. So you expect it from that perspective as well. When you're the world champs, you get to enjoy the spoils of that, and that's fair to me."
It sounds like he's acknowledging the reality of the situation without letting it get to him.
Yeah, he's not making excuses or complaining. He's just focused on the game itself.
Dodgers manager Dave Roberts, on the other hand, seems a bit more aware of the historical significance of the Cubs, but he also doesn't shy away from acknowledging Ohtani's dominance. He says, "I just think it's more skewed because of Shohei, and nothing against the other Japanese players, but Shohei is just such a beast of this whole equation."
So both managers are seeing this from their own perspectives, but they're both recognizing the unique circumstances.
And they're both right, in a way.
Exactly. It's just a really fascinating situation all around. And of course, we have to mention the actual outcome of the first game.
The Dodgers won 4-1.
Not a huge surprise given everything we've discussed, but the article also mentions that the Cubs had to face Roki Sasaki in the second game.
Yeah, the Dodgers' young pitching phenom. Talk about a tough challenge.
So even beyond Ohtani, the Cubs were up against a really strong Dodgers team.
It really puts that underdog narrative into perspective.
Definitely. So what are the big takeaways here?
Well, I think this article shows us just how powerful individual star power can be, especially on a global stage.
And it highlights the challenge of balancing that star power with team dynamics and the historical significance of other teams.
Like the Cubs, they've got this incredible legacy, but in this particular moment, it's kind of being overshadowed by the Ohtani phenomenon.
But that doesn't diminish their history or their fan base.
Exactly. And it makes you wonder, is this just the reality of sports now? Will we always see these huge individual stars casting a shadow over even the most storied franchises?
It's a good question to think about. I mean, how do we value different aspects of sports? The history, the individual brilliance, the team narrative, it's all part of the equation.
It's all part of what makes sports so compelling, right?
Absolutely. All right, so that's our deep dive for today. Thanks for joining us.
As always, thanks for listening, and we'll see you next time for another fascinating deep dive.
See you then.